and welcome to Sarah's Stampin' Retreat. Today I'm going to be showing you 3 Aztec card designs for a bit of an unexpected special card. So make sure you check them all out and let me know when you get to the end which is your favourite. And to create them we're going to be using this gorgeous Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady kit that comes with the latest Crafting Essentials magazine box kit. So you get all of this in your kit and a magazine full of ideas of how to use it. So I'll quickly take you through the kit before we get onto the card. So we've got this embossing folder, we've got these cute dies, we've got this beautiful huge stamp set full of sentiments and birds and flowers. Got a dragonfly and a bee and a butterfly, loads of lovely imagery on there. And then you also get this paper pack. This usually comes in the middle of your magazine, so I'm going to quickly flick through it for you. So you've got these cut apart pieces, gorgeous florals, more cut aparts, and then you've got some of these kind of plainer pieces along with florals, and you can see there's kind of lots of different styles within the pack, so really nice to use on lots of different card designs. So we've got some more cut aparts here. And then we're back to the beginning, so you get 2 sheets of each. So now let's move on to creating our cards. So then for my first card, I've cut this piece out of this corner of this paper, and I want to play with the dimensions of the papers on this one. So I'm going to cut some elements out of this corner. You can see this corner is the same as this one. So I want to just cut out some of the foreground elements. I'm going to cut out this flower here, and this leaf here, because those are the ones that kind of come out towards the front. And then actually I'm just going to cut this petal and the centre of this flower as well, because they're kind of a bit further forwards in the pattern as well. You can tell what's further forward because it's what you can see the whole of. Like you can see that this leaf covers most of this flower, but this covers a little bit here, so that's why I'm going to just cut out this petal and the centre of this flower, because those are the things that in my eye are more in the foreground of the picture. So for this card I've got a 5 by 5 inch Aztec base, and for most of my Aztec cards I like to use a heavy duty Aztecs. This one is 240 micron and it makes for a nice sturdy card blank. And I've got a 5-inch piece of this dotty paper from the pack and a 5-inch piece of cardstock. So when I'm making Aztec cards I like to write on the back as opposed to the inside, because obviously you can see a lot of things through, so you don't really want to write on the inside. So I'm going to use sticky dot sheet to add this to my card. And I'll just essentially make my piece of paper into a sticker I can then just add on to my card. And I want this to go inside. Some of you might have noticed that I flipped my mat over, and that's so that I could line up my card and my mat on the line so that I can make sure it's in the centre of my card, because otherwise it's quite difficult to eyeball it with having a see-through card. So I'm going to close that up again, and then I'm going to glue this onto the back, and then I'm going to line this up with that square. So because it's an Aztec card, that yellow is obviously going to kind of form a base for the card front. So then I'm going to grab this, I'm going to put some sticky dots behind that as well. And then I'm going to line this up with the bottom here. And then we can add the piece that we cut out with some foam pits. And then I've got this happy birthday that I've also cut from the pack that I want to pop up. Then I've got this small strip of the yellow spotty paper, so I'm just going to add a few of the glue dots down the side of here, and then I'm just going to add a strip of dotty down there, and that will just tie the outside in with the inside. And you can see as well that because we've used the glue dots, you don't really get a messy inside. You can just see the back of the paper. And then I'm also just going to cut out this bee. And then I'm going to pop a frame pad behind the bee as well. So then we've got this gorgeous card, and it really plays with the dimensions with the paper behind it, because when it's closed it looks like this, when it's open that kind of goes open, so it'll sit on the shelf kind of like that. So this yellow part kind of adds a bit of a background, but it's not directly behind it unless it's closed. And then we've got the layers of pattern paper that also add more dimension to the card. So then for my next card, I'm going to use these netted scalloped framed dies from Alex Siberia Design. You can see the ones that I've taken out marked with the lines. It's a really useful set. And I've got a piece of this paper. I'm going to add it to some white cardstock so that it makes the die cutting easier. So when you're gluing paper, you want to make sure that you get a really nice thin coat of glue, because otherwise you're going to make a mess. It's going to get all kind of like lumpy and bumpy. You also, because we're die cutting, you want to make sure it's got quite a nice even coating of glue all the way across, because otherwise when you're die cut in the middle it might come away. So then what I want to do is I want to cut this large scalloped rectangle out. You can see that's the second one down here. Then I'm going to cut this in the middle, so that will create a frame. And then I also want to cut this out, and we'll use that in the middle. So I'll tape those all down so that they're in the right place, and then run them through my die cutting machine. So then I've got the frame and I've got this piece in the middle. I want to add those to the front of my card, so I'm going to do that with sticky dots. So now we've got this fun front to our card where you can kind of see through portions of it, and you've got the frame over the rest. So now we're going to add this to the back of our card, and this is just a white piece that I have cut out using that same frame die. And this one will go inside. Then I've die cut all the pieces from the die set, and I've cut them all in white, so I just did one swipe through. I don't know if we're going to use all of them, but I'm going to colour them and set them out how I want them and see what happens. So I'm going to colour them with my alcohol markers. I've got the Altenew Water Garden and Sunshine Valley Garden sets. I'm going to put down a piece of scrap paper because obviously I want to go over the sides of the die cuts. And the way that I like to colour is to go over the whole thing in the lightest colour first, and then I'll add in details with darker colours as we go along. So then now that these pieces are coloured, I'm going to add everything onto my card. I'm going to add on the sentiment first because everything else will kind of like go around there. I want to kind of make it look like the bird is kind of perching on the sentiment. So I'm going to glue on some of these pieces. My glue's run out, so I'm going to try this scrapbook.com one that they sent me. And it's craft glue. It comes with a bunch of different applicators, so I thought maybe I'll give this a go. So that goes onto there, and then the tips go onto the top of that, and then it says the cleaning pin, which is this, says to put it in after each use, and then that will help prevent clogging. It does come out in a really nice fine line. So then I'm just going to grab some of these blue gems from this Peacock Crystal collection from Little Things by Lucy's Cards. Then I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the centre of each of these flowers. And add one of these in. And then I'm going to add a couple around as well. So then how pretty is that? And I think having that acetate really kind of adds to the card with the see-through frame bit round here. So then for my final card, I'm actually using a much lighter weight acetate. And you can see it still stands up fine, but it is like it's got a lot more movement to it. The reason that I'm using that for this card is that I am going to heat emboss on it, and this is the best acetate I've found for heat embossing. So that is this heat resistant acetate from Dovecraft. So when you're heat embossing acetate, I always think it's best to give like a good covering of like an embossing buddy or another kind of similar tool, just to get off everything that could help the powder to stick to the acetate, because obviously the acetate is quite static naturally, so you want to get off as much of that as possible. So then I'm going to use the stamps, and I'm going to use a lot of the floral stamps across here. So I'm going to lay them out to see kind of where I want them. Now I'm going to use my embossing ink to stamp onto here, and then because I can't really see very well where they've stamped, I'm going to pour on my embossing powder. So I'm going to use my Opaque Bright White Superfine embossing powder from Wow. And with the acetate, because it's quite static, you want to give it a good flick to get any excess off. So you can see that this acetate heat embosses really nicely. You don't get any of the kind of like melting that you get with a lot of them. But the trick is to get the heat gun really hot before you ever take it to the acetate, so that it's on as little as possible, and it melts really quickly on the acetate. So just literally go over it so quickly so that it's just heated, and then you move on to the next bit. Because even with the heat resistant acetate, it can warp if you leave it on for too long. So now that that's set, I'm going to add some more of this just in case I've got my fingers on it, and I'm going to do the next two. Also, the stamps can have a bit of an ability to slip and slide a little bit on the acetate, so you want to try and put it straight down and bring it straight up again without too much kind of rocking and rolling. Now I'm just going to use the tip of this to fill in the last gap. So now that that's all set, I'm just going to go over with some just paper towel just to remove any of the excess powder from the embossing buddy tool. So I'm going to set that aside a second because I want to make a little piece for in the centre of the card. So this is an A6 card blank, so it's 5 7/8 by 4 1/8 inches, and these pieces are an inch smaller than that. So then I'm going to come in with my Distress Oxide ink, so I'm going to go with Cracked Pistachio at the bottom. And then from there I'm going to go with Salvage Patina. And then we'll go with Broken China at the top. And when I'm blending my inks, I like to get the colour down first, and then I go back and kind of go over and blend them together. So this will be now my second layer. So I'm going to go over the Broken China, and back over the Salvage Patina, and then over the Cracked Pistachio. You can see that second time everything blends together much more nicely. I like working with the Distress Oxide inks because they blend so much more nicely together than the ordinary inks. So then that will go inside my card like that. So you can see that then this heat embossing will show up really nicely. So I'm going to grab some scrap white paper. I'm going to stamp and colour the butterfly and the dragonfly, but I'm not sure if I'm going to use them both or not. For those of you who haven't seen me use new stamps before, I always like to go over them with embossing ink first, because that almost helps the ink to stick to the image better and you get a crisper image. You only need to do it that first time. It kind of almost just like preps the stamp for being used. And then you can see we're getting really nice crisp images with these now. So you can see I've got the dragonfly and the butterfly, which I've coloured with my alcohol markers, and I've also cut this from the paper pack. And I've kind of played about with it, and I think I just like the dragonfly. I know some people might like the added colour of the butterfly. I'm kind of liking this bluey green colour palette, so I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to glue this inside my card. And then I'm going to add a piece of white cardstock the same size to add my sentiment on to the back. Then I'm going to add some foam pads behind the dragonfly and the sentiment. So then I'm just going to add on a few of these blue gems that we used for the last card. This glue is actually really nice for these gems because it doesn't come out too quickly, so you can get like a nice controlled little bit of glue quite easily. So then there's that final card finished. You can see it's really nice with the heat embossing on the acetate because it allows you to play with that colour underneath. It gives a really nice effect. So then there are today's 3 acetate cards. We've used different techniques on each of them. I think they're all really pretty. Let me know in the comments below which is your favourite. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, I'd really appreciate you clicking like below. You can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got a new video available. All of the products that I've used for today's cards are listed in the description below, and there's also a link there to my blog where you can find a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.